So we'll go ahead and call to order the Franklin City Schools Board of Education regular meeting for November 23rd. Dr. Sandberg, do you want to call the roll?
Mr. Nipper is absent. Mrs. Raleigh?
Here.
Mr. Sizemore? Here. Mr. Fleming? Here. Mrs. Wolfenberger?
Here. All right, so join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next up, we have adoption of the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions? All right, hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion. All right, Mr. Fleming, and is there a second? Mr. Sizemore? Dr. Sanders?
Ms. Raleigh?
Yes.
Mr. Sizemore?
Yes.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Ms. Wolfenberger?
Yes. Next up, we have approval of the November 9th work session and October 26th regular session. Any discussion or questions about those? All right, hearing none, chair will entertain a motion to approve as presented.
So moved.
Mrs. Raleigh?
Second.
And second, Mr. Fleming? Oh, Dr. Sanders?
Mrs. Raleigh?
Yes.
Mr. Sizemore?
Yes.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Mrs. Wolfenberger?
Yes. All right, next up, we have recognition of guests and public participation, and please note the chair reserves the right to limit time on those comments.
I got a question. Was I put on the agenda for executive board meeting?
No, we do not have an executive session.
Okay, well, I called Rob in regards to, I guess I'll bring it now. Had issues with a principal and an employee of the school.
Okay, so hold on, before we go any further, this is open session.
Yes,
So is it a personnel issue?
this is an issue that I have with, yes, personnel.
Okay, so I think that's something that we shouldn't have an open session. It's gonna be something that's really better suited for executive session.
And Rob mentioned that he put me on the agenda for this week in the executive session. What's this?
Okay, so I don't have that. Does any idea?
I got the email if you'd see it.
It's not on here and I was not informed of any executive session.
Well, what I was gonna say is, we should probably put on a different meeting. If there's a mistake on it. I don't know, do you have that? I'm sorry, do you want to forward me that email so I can take a look at it?
It would be better if Mr. Roberts was here to address
Well, yeah, that's what's
the
there.
personnel issue.
Yeah. I agree.
It really don't go with Mr. Rodney.
Huh?
Rodney didn't deal with it.
No, well. I thought I was understood.
Matter of fact, it's a text.
I don't, honestly, I've never had this happen, so I just have to figure it out. That's if I don't want to be put on the agenda.
Well, I talked to him, I said, I do want to be on the agenda. Then he said, done. Have a great day.
Okay, well, why don't we, maybe put it on the next meeting's agenda?
Okay.
That might be,
We could get Harry in the next 2 weeks. That's fine.
was there anything that's pending currently that hasn't been resolved?
That's the problem, the resolution.
The resolution is the problem?
Correct.
Okay. Just so we have some clarification. All right, well, it wasn't on for today, and like I said, since the text says I don't want to be on after the call, I just
Okay,
want to.
that's fine. I'll call Rob right now. That's fine. Appreciate it.
We're sorry for any misunderstanding.
Yeah, I'm
No,
sorry.
it's just how it's got to be put out in public and it's got to go my way then. That's fine. Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll move on to recognition of Steve and Leanne Burnett.
Yes, I want to take this time, if we could, to acknowledge the work of Steve and Leanne on the levy we just recently ran, and successful levy, which really is going to change the course of the district. And to be honest with you, I think it's going to change the course of the city and the township over the next several years. And basically, I remember back in 2018, we were really shocked when we had 3,900 yes votes, because the goal had always been to get 3,000 yeses when we pass a levy. And it was a very, very highly sought after election with midterms. And so we actually had 3,900 yes votes at that particular time. With COVID going on, extremely busy time. And we were having trouble, I'll be honest with you, we were having trouble getting anybody to chair the levy. And Steve and Leanne stepped up for the district, and they stepped up, even though both of them work in the district, they stepped up as community members in the district. And I just want to read what we did, because in a very, very short period of time, basically after school was getting ready to start, the teachers had already reported when they agreed to be a part of this chair, being co-chairs. And they went basically from 0 to election day in 6 weeks. And they worked with a group of approximately 20 people, very, very dedicated like they are, but they had to be the ringleaders and organize and do all kinds of things. But this says a certificate award to Leanne and Steve Burnett in honor with appreciation for being co-chairs of the FCS 2020 levy for their hard work, tireless efforts, and dedication to our community and schools. This was the first time the FCS district had 5,694 votes. So when we were thrilled with 3,900, we got almost 1,800 more votes and won every precinct, which I don't believe has ever been done before. And so we're acknowledging for that great accomplishment. That's why Charlie gets to come here to every meeting and talk about updates. That's why there's excitement in the community. And we're just very, very appreciative of Leanne and Stephen to step up and really be great community members. And we'll make a true difference for our kids for the next 50 or so years. So thank you very much.
You know, I would, if I can say a few words, you know, we both went to Franklin, went through school here, we live here, so we really like Franklin. And this is gonna be good for the district. Like this, as Dr. Sanders said, this is gonna put us on level playing ground. And, you know, forget that it's the new schools, right? I mean, yeah, everybody's talking about the new schools. It's gonna be a better opportunity for the students as well. So that's what it's all about. Making sure the students get the opportunities to fulfill whatever it is they envision for their life.
Okay, awesome. And we would do it again.
That says a lot.
You didn't realize how much work it was, but we would do it again.
You know, and I think Dr. Sanders kind of didn't spill the whole beans on what it was going to do. He would have talked to me the first time because he knew it was a little bit more than what I was initially thinking it was. So now I know for next time.
Well, just for your information, we're having those checked, but we're like 99% sure that Franklin won its bond issue by the largest margin in the state of Ohio.
Wow.
That's exciting.
And you know, and like Dr. Sanders said, it was not just us. We had lots of staff members, community members, and I think it just goes to show that the community is behind the school. And they're ready for this. They know that we need it. So, and I'm excited. I'm excited for what it's going to do for the community and the schools.
We are too. You're exactly right. It's instructional delivery, and our kids are going to have that opportunity now because we're going to have facilities that are capable of facilitating what they need.
Right.
So, I mean, our gratitude, we can't express it. We appreciate you stepping up to the plate. And yes, we know you, and you work here, and we know what fabulous people you are. We've watched you. I've watched you. So, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Well, thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, we can't thank you enough, and I think I talked to you before, so this may be the biggest thing that happens for our town in our lifetime, and I really believe that. it's fantastic, and I still kind of can't wrap my head around this process that's really gonna happen, and it's like a third job. You work and you have children, and then you have to do this on top of it, so thank you so much.
But, you know, and like you said, you know, we went to school, we both, I was at Penn Royal, he was at Gertie, now we both teach here, we built 2 houses in the district. And part of me, you know, before passing this, I would love for my children to say, I love Franklin, I love the small town feel, I love that the kids are more than just a number.
Yes.
And before, you know, I couldn't have expected my kids to hang around here, you know, with what we have. But now I'm hopeful that maybe one or both will want to stay and have the one block, always a block.
Yeah. All right, well, thanks again, guys.
Thank you so much.
We're gonna move on with the meeting. You can stay if you want, but you don't have to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and next up, we have a PD update from Mrs. Denise.
I'll try to bring it up. Excuse me. Thank you, Amy. Well, I know you have a lot on your agenda tonight, and I can be very succinct and just say it was awesome. We really had a wonderful PD. We start working on this a year in advance. We will start in January for the next, the fall. And I know this is teeny tiny, but I gave you a snapshot of all the different sessions that we had going on. And we get these sessions, first of all, we send out at the end of the full PD round what topics the teachers are interested in. So we take a look at the topics that they have. We ask them if they have any contacts to those topics. We take a look at where we are instructionally to see, you know, from a central office perspective, maybe some things we need to bolster in there. And then this goes to a committee. I don't do this in isolation. I'll be recognizing that committee at the end of this presentation. And I think this is probably what you're probably the most interested in, because it's such a diverse, I can talk and get down to the weeds of all the different types of sessions we have. But here's what I would say, that in session 1, it received 4.6, an average of 4.6 out of 5, 5 being excellent. As far as how was your session, you know, and what would you want the presenter to know? And it was 4.5 out of 5. So just so you know, just kind of an overview of who we had. We had 5 out of 12 that were our own staff members. They got rave reviews on their sessions. And then second bullet, I gave you some of the things that we spent some time learning to dig deeper in. These are either instructional strategies, resources that we use to deliver instruction. And the new highlighted topic is reading. We've had a lot of success with guided math and scaffolding instruction in math, even with COVID, where we're trying to figure out how to make it safe. And we've taken a look at our reading and know that needs to be the thing that we need to kind of bring on board, that small group, intentional reading, and not just, it's so interesting because I've been digging into the weeds of it, not just level literacy, not what people call balanced literacy, but the science of reading. And what's phenomenal, just a little sidebar, when you get out there and you Google the science of reading, first thing that comes up is fast forward. Isn't that interesting? And they've got a lot of white pages on that. And so from my perspective, hang on a second, from my perspective, this is what I hope, this is kind of my theme this year. I want us to be better tomorrow than we are today. And we brought Travis Strosky back from the Teach Better team. As you know, we had about 30 people that hung out with him in September, and they developed the grid method unit lessons. He's come back. They did an overview of how it's going, and they developed some more. He is the CFO and CEO of the Teach Better team out of Canton, Ohio. And these are all the people that work to make it happen. We meet very frequently as we're getting closer to those days. We meet very frequently, making sure that we've got a space. It's always difficult with spacing, but in light of COVID, social distancing, wearing masks and making sure we utilize several off-site locations outside of the Franklin High School to try to to facilitate that. So in a word, I think you saw the stars there. Are there any questions in particular? If you had a chance to look at any of the sessions, what you wondered, if I can define any of those sessions better for you than just giving you a topic?
Well, for me, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Okay, is there any other information that you would like to have that I didn't provide for you today on the professional development?
Not for me personally. I think it's-
Well, I just want to thank the Board of Education for allowing us to have that day. We can set aside and we can really be intentional about instructional practices. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Amy.
Next up, we have Charlie from SCP.
All right, so thank you guys so much. It's been 2 weeks and I promised I'd be back. And so today I want to share with you kind of what's been going on and what to expect in the next couple of weeks after this. So I talked about setting up a team. We had an ELP kickoff meeting with OFCC. You're going to see tons of acronyms from me, so if I give you two, I can just raise your hand and I'll define them. But ELP is the program that you're in. OFCC is the co-owner that will reimburse you money. We had a real nice gentleman from the state, Joseph, basically kind of explain the handoff. We have another company that would be a part of the team called Resource International. The state pays for them, so you don't even have to worry. They'll do quarterly check-ins. They'll look at the finances. Their jobs to make sure that what we collectively do here earns you guys the credit that you need, and that's really it. So Chris, I know really well. I've worked with him for probably 14, 15 years, and he is a very reasonable guy, good to work with. So bottom line is Chris will check in to make sure everything we're doing is within the design manual. We talked about CMR selection schedule. So the construction management at risk is the delivery model for how you're going to build the new buildings. There's a resolution later on in the agenda that authorizes the administration to release that. The CMR process is similar to the architecture process for you, but it's 2 steps. So it has the first step like architects where you get qualifications. You will review those, you will rate, and then you will send to a selected group pricing proposals. So you will get pricing. You are also selecting them on a concept called best value. So you pick architects just on qualifications and scoring. On CMs, you will see some pricing, and you will also have qualifications. You can weight it 50-50, you can do 60-40, you can kind of put more weight in the one, in which can maybe change the score. So we've got that. We've been working with NS Britton. They're using all the state documents. So really all they're doing is kind of just modifying it and issuing that out. So that's rolling. Another one is the owner's agent selection schedule. I know there's a resolution today to authorize the administration to do that. The owner's agent is just a third party that kind of acts in the owner's best interest. There's a lot of companies that do this all the time for school districts. In your case, it's highly advised to do it with transition you're having with your treasurer. We know that Robert is an interim treasurer. We know he's not going to be here for the long haul. And to kind of have this up, the owner's agent also does a financial tracking as a service. So that's a part of that process. One thing to clarify is the CMR selection process does result in an interview. And we know you guys want to do that as a board meeting. So we lay that out looking at your board schedule. That would probably happen in the February board meeting. The owner's agent does not require an interview. If you wanted to, you can just issue those, take the qualifications, and then review them and say, hey, here's what we want to hire. Maybe just send them a question because that'll speed the process up rather than doing everything as a board meeting. We talked about the commissioning agent. We didn't establish a schedule yet just because it's another one of those things where the state has a pre-qualified list. There's about 5 or 6 companies. I can name a couple in Dayton. There's one in Monroe. There's a couple in Cincinnati where they would review the documents that we ultimately come up with, and then they also monitor the installation. The way to think of a commissioning agent is really just kind of a really high-tech mechanic that kind of comes in and makes sure that the building is humming as efficient as possible. They spend most of their time looking at HVAC. And so again, pick them, that's through a pre-qualified list. So you can again tell those folks to submit there's already a pre-qualified list. You can just say submit your stuff already, and they can do that, and then the board can make a recommendation. I'm sorry, the administration can make a recommendation. We need to set up the design teams. So I've started to work with Dr. Sander on dates. This will be a bi-monthly meeting. We meet twice a month. And so I've got dates that work for SHP. I've asked the district for some dates that work for them. We're going to likely pick, mornings on the first and third Thursday of the month or something like that. Again, this main group is generally superintendent, treasurer, business manager, architect, CM. So it's usually 6 to maybe 10 people total, and they make sure that scope, schedule, and quality is being maintained throughout the entire process. We will start building design teams. We will start to formulate those. The POR, which is the program, is ready, and I'll get to what we're doing with that here shortly. And then following that, that's again a reminder: principals, teachers, staff, students, they really look at the functionality. They will influence how we arrange all the parts and pieces. And then also a reminder that we have a community design team. We'll get that group ready when the POR is ready to review. And again, that's a lot of parents and residents, and they primarily look at the arrangement of the site and the aesthetics. What is this building going to look like? So the big thing that we've done is we started the high school program requirements. We met with Kelly, I think it was early last week, but maybe the previous week. On Friday. Yeah, okay, so it was the week I was here, we met on that Friday. And we gave her homework, which you'll see in a second, to give us how you're operating today. How many English classrooms do you have? How many social studies classrooms do you have? How many math? How many locker rooms? How many, and then we went into some more detailed questions. How many lunch periods do you have? How do you envision, how does your media center operate? How does your office operate? A lot of those kind of functionality things, real high level. It was a project architect, it was myself, and it was an interior designer kind of grilling Kelly. She's the one that knows the building the best, so she is the right person to start. We also have authorized site surveys to start, so they're going to show up next Monday. They're doing some computer work right now with the county. They go to Warren County to get some of the topography, the city to see kind of where utilities are, but then they're going to show up next week with, this is the right picture. They're the guys with tripods, and actually I think they drive things around now. A lot of it's digital. So they can get, where are the curbs, where are the existing pavement, where's the grass, and where, how's your slope? That's the big thing. Utilities, topography, and existing conditions. We sent a drawdown schedule to the treasurer, and he shared that with your bond counsel on just the spend. So he wanted to know how is the flow of money. So we have forecasted the design fees, the contract with us, how that will be basically starting January 2021 until the duration of the project. And then we've put a bell curve on the construction of the high school, the bell curve on the construction of the relocated junior high school, and that's the initial draft. So I know there's some other, just the flow of the money. So here's what Kelly gave us. She provided English department, 7 classrooms, and then comments, math, science, social studies. This thing keeps going. I didn't want to give you it all. I figured the font right here was small enough. But this is a really good exercise for her to say, here's what we have. And then what we start to do, again, it's super duper small, so we plug it into a spreadsheet from the state. So we started to plug in, you can see 25 classrooms, totaling 20,000 square feet. Oops, touchscreen. Science classrooms are different, prep rooms, break rooms, restrooms. This document goes all the way down to pencil sharpeners and garbage cans. That's how detailed it is. It tells us how many we use in need. So we've started this, and then ultimately this populates all back to a front page, which has the building divided into academics, special ed, the administrative office, media center, art, music, tech ed, business, family consumer science, physical ed, dining rooms, food service, custodial, hallways, toilets, HVAC, electrical, server rooms, everything encompassing a school. It's put into this. So we have our first draft. It's a little bit over. That's always the case. And now it's our job to kind of massage it a little bit, and we'll go back to Kelly. So we're into the programming process. So it's not the most exciting thing in the world. It's a spreadsheet, but it's the POR. It's what establishes all the components to get all of this really moving. So gosh, I gotta go touch that screen. So in order to have these initial meetings, we got to say, here's what we're playing with. Here's the rules or the deck of cards that we have. So so we'll probably, in knowing right now that just this year people are kind of tumbling and tumbling to the end. I don't know if we'll have any of these in December. We might, but we probably will do it early January. Really come out refreshed, when people kind of can take some time off from school and a new year. So really, what's coming up next? Again, high school programmer requirements, the scope of work. We're going to continue to work on that. We'll review with Kelly and others as needed. As I said, the site surveys are going to start next week. Those people won't go in the building. They're out on the outside. And this company does school surveys all the time throughout Ohio, so they're familiar with processes. We need to set up the first core team meetings, so we really need to get those moving. And probably in December, we will probably hold our first couple meetings where we'll start to set the agenda, and the administration can start to understand the flow of everything. I think between now and the next board meeting, you probably will receive owner's agent proposals. So we'll have to decide, what to do with those. We need to move quick. We want that owner's agent to be a part of the CM selection.
Do we advertise for those, Charlie?
You guys will. There's a resolution, I believe, that is proposed today for you guys to pass for the advertisement. There's no set time, so it'll run, I think, next week in the paper. And then I think the following week they come in. So that's it. So again, setting up the team. That's what we're doing. So,
Charlie, on the POR, so is that kind of restricted to what we have now as far as classrooms, or if Kelly says, hey, I foresee, man, if we had 2 more classrooms, we'd love to have this or this, so that does project for some growth. Right?
So yes, so one of the things, this is currently what we have now, and like I said, this keeps going deeper. There's comments, and then she has a tab called wish list of what I want. And so she's given us comments on spaces that aren't used as much, spaces that may be too big, spaces that may be too small. And so it helps to start, because your growth is fairly, we're not doubling the size of the school. It's roughly the same size as the current school. So when we have that apples to apples, let's start with what you have, and then let's plug it in, and then let's look to the future next. So that comes with part of it.
All right, thank you. Dr. Shannon, could we get at least on the board docs I'm looking at, we've got the 11.920, so it wasn't matching.
Yeah.
The attachment on our board docs was the 11.920 version of this.
That was the one I gave. That was the one I gave
Okay.
2 weeks ago.
So
this one we just created today.
Can we get that updated one attached for the board meeting records, so we got that consistent with the updates, please?
When does your agenda get sent out? Is it Friday? The Friday? Okay. Well, I did this today, so we'll get this sent out Friday, and it'll get a little more advanced.
That would just be nice to have that updated information when we go back into these meetings in the future. We can go.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was explaining this. I live fairly close. I can get home in 20 minutes from here.
You sure you want that on record?
I don't want that on record, but what I'm saying is, and I know this is new, so I'm willing to come to these meetings and share this because I know it's important. And I also want to just promote the importance of time. We're rolling. The train's left the station. It's moving. We're not chugging yet, but it's starting to just slowly go. So it's amazing how quick we got to get to the mode if we want to be moving dirt next year.
So can you go back to the first slide real fast?
Yep.
I want to make sure. So are these things, is this the order of things? Or like, for example, like you said, the owner's agent, can we be wait, hold on, now I got confused. There's so many things to do.
Yes.
You said one of them we wanted to have for the CMR selection.
Yes, so the owner's
Okay, so
agent.
we need to do that one.
Yeah, the owner's agent, there is no timeline. The CMR takes 60 days, minimum. It can go 90. And so the owner's agent and commissioning agent, if you really, really want to, we can pick a commissioning agent by next Monday. Those marketing departments wouldn't be too happy, but we could do it. So owner's agent is the same thing. There is no prescribed method for doing it. The CMR and the architect selection have a little more rules, and it's reflective of the contracts. I mean, these contracts are not going to be as much as the other two.
And so like, when we get down to like just the practical aspect of these, like who's keeping these timelines? Is something we are doing?
No,
Is it like?
what, so
I mean,
when,
I've never done this, like,
Yeah.
question, but like, I don't, who.
yeah, so one of the meetings we had last, it was what, Thursday or Friday? It was Friday, yeah. We met with Bronson McCord, myself, Mr. Dufresne. You were, witness of the health department. You were hanging out with the governor. So we all talked about the timing. And then really, as Britton is feeding the district the information that you guys need in order to procure those.
Okay.
And so once those are in place, all this is led by SHP, this is led by SHP, this is led by SHP. So you will see me and others on my team spearheading these meetings. But right now, I think the marching orders, Mr. Dufresne has done a good job teeing it up very fast. Yep.
So is there anything like that we need to put on our next agenda? Or is this just stuff that'll?
I think on the December 14th agenda is to probably take a recommendation for the owner's agent. Yes.
For the finance meeting, we just had Wednesday.
He talked about it, but there's a resolution here that we have to get out tonight so that we can do that at the next meeting.
Yeah. And then maybe the next one is the CMR resolution.
It's on here.
CMR side, okay.
We went ahead just so we're not behind schedule.
Okay, good. Yeah, you guys are on it, and I know you're really running a person short with Rodney out, and everything's been moving forward quickly. So, but we're on schedule, and we're doing. So. The state was actually really quick to have this meeting. I know Mike loved this meeting because it was 30 minutes and it was quick to the point. And
sometimes shorter is better.
Yeah, so sometimes they drag that one on and they don't do it. If you guys in November, they might schedule it in January. So it was, they were excited to.
Yeah, we actually scheduled that prior to the November levy election. So just to be ready to go.
Yep.
Awesome.
How does the board stay engaged with the design teams? Because that's moving forward.
That's a district decision for how you guys want to do that. We talked last time to potentially appoint one or two people to attend those. That's generally what I see is you have one or two board members who have more flexibility in their schedule to attend those. These usually happen.
That's not what we expressed last time.
It wasn't?
No.
Okay,
No, that's, remember that?
No,
That's
yeah,
right
that's
over
not
here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
we wanted to be, yeah.
Usually these happen after school. So if you guys dismiss at 3:30, we're meeting by 3:45 till 4:45 or something. These will probably be evening meetings just because you have more parents who kind of make dinner, both 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock meetings. And then these are usually during the school day.
Right. So basically, I think before anything's done with the administrative court team, that will be reported here for input from here. Because you all have final say on everything.
Yeah, I think Mr. Raleigh's point was exactly what I was getting at, is how to be engaged together as a board versus just one or two voices.
Right, we want like a board core team,
Yeah.
core design team.
I think the fact that I'm going to come here frequently and present is your opportunity where you guys in a forum can all see what we're doing.
Right, but we don't like,
We want to say,
We wanna see-
design wise, we want to be able to have.
Yeah.
input.
Exactly.
And the building design team, it influences arrangements of parts and pieces, and we can come to you first, and then we can say, hey, here's what the board wants, and give us your feedback. I don't have a set standard. I can customize it to the district's desires. So, I have one board right now who says anything that you put out, any team, we have to see it first. So I attend every single one of their board meetings and I have to present all these graphics. And now we're at the point doing really fun stuff. So I present all these really fun pictures. You guys like these? They say, yeah. And then the next
That puts
day.
us in approval mode,
Yeah.
though, approval or decline mode.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think I mean, it's not like we're trying to micromanage every piece, but like the big high level designs, this is what we talked about last time, was we, chose, SHB based upon some of the design, like the stuff that we saw, and we would like to have kind of the overarching big picture. This is what we're thinking, and if people don't like it and they hate it, obviously then we're, we're not
Well,
gonna go down that
Yeah,
road.
I'm not doing my job.
It was my memory that this board will not operate just like the board he talked about before stuff comes out, that it has to be vetted through here, and these are what we're looking at, and then it goes to the committee.
I think you had an initial idea, we wanted to say like, this is kind of what we're thinking.
Right.
And then the committee, if we can't be there, which we can't,
Correct.
obviously,
Yeah.
they can kind of take that around it and then come back and say, well, this is what we.
So probably what I would do is we schedule a meeting, let's say February, we start to do this. I will be here at the February meeting, but then I'd probably schedule within the next day or 2 days, the building design team. To keep the momentum going for timing. And oftentimes when I do that, a board member will also come to that to make sure there's a consistent voice.
Any other questions, concerns, issues? All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm gonna hang out if there's any questions on some of the things that we'll approve later on.
That'd be great, thank you.
Okay.
All right, next up, we have recommendations from Dr. Sanders.
Yes, I was going to ask that the board approve on a consent agenda items 4A through D, which is the protocols, the Springboro Library Board of Trustees, the anti-vaping legislation, and the Franklin High School Student Handbook language update for attendance, which was discussed at the meeting earlier this month.
I'd rather you leave A out.
Okay. So my recommendation then would be 4D, B through D as consent. Then I'll come back to A if that's okay.
Well, what about E? Did you have that?
I did not want
Okay.
to, E's different.
Okay, so is there a motion for consent agenda of 4B through D? Mr.
Second.
Sizemore and Mrs. Raleigh, second. Dr. Sanders?
Mrs. Raleigh,
Yes.
Mr. Sizemore,
Yes.
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Ms. Wolfenbarger.
Yes.
Item A is the Franklin City Schools Plan for Warren County Purple Protocols.
All right, and we had started, I believe, we did this as a first read last meeting.
Correct.
And so, I had some questions, Dr. Sanders, I think we addressed some of this, but, this is all new to us, we're not healthcare professionals, we're doing the best we can with the information that we're given and the recommendations we have. This index, explain to me, is this something that the health district approves? I think we have the ability to do it, but how does that work?
Yes, the hell, we sent these, and they said as long as we're following the other protocols, that these kickouts to say, okay, what would cause us to either close a school or close the district was fine with them. So it did have their approval. That was shared with Mr. McFarland, Mr. Nisi, Mr. Roberts also as well, from the standpoint that they did approve that as long as we're following the traditional protocols that we are under the items that we're working with now, face to face.
But this is something that you presented to them to approve, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Do they have a set recommendation?
No, they do not.
They just have their purple.
Please.
They're just their purple, their plain purple recommendation is their recommendation.
The purple part comes from the actual state with that 7 categories when it kicks in. When it hit that, that's all they do is talk about the color of the county, and then what we do within, they leave up to each individual school district.
But does the state recommend going fully remote at purple?
No, they do not.
And the Warren County Health District is not?
No, they do not.
So they just tell us, hey, we're running purple, but here you can make up your own
Purple,
guidelines.
purple is remote and no extracurriculars.
That's what we.
That's what we originally approved back in the summertime, because all we had that particular time was the 4 codes for the different types of, on those 7 standards where the counties were. But now that we've gotten schooling, we've got more specific data as far as number of staff, the number of students positive, as well as those quarantines. And what we really looked at were the ones that were positive, because from the standpoint of quarantine, just happened to be done luck. And they are doing a study. Our data is went up to Columbus all the way through the 18th of December. And because of the safety in the schools, it is anticipated that after December the 18th, they look at the data, we're hearing they will probably reduce that 6-foot radius to a 3-foot radius for the quarantine, because they're finding that people are not turning positive, getting COVID in the 6-foot radius, following the protocols that we're doing. And that actually what he said is 2 barriers and 3 foot means you're safe. In other words, a mask and 3 feet of distance makes you safe. I had a question, what was 2 barriers? Was it the plastic sheets? And he said mask, specifically. So they are leading up the actual triggers of when to go remote. They're actually leading up to individual districts to determine those particular triggers, but ours were appropriate.
Would you say today we're close to any of these triggers right now?
Transportation,
Subs as well, right?
please.
Subs as well.
Subs are tight, yes,
Yes.
exactly. Those are the 2. Something else that was told to us verbally, I'm not acting on it, no, the ESC is acting on it. I'm not acting on it until I actually get a letterhead from the health department that's saying that if you are exposed as a staff member and asymptomatic, you are still able to work. And that was new on Friday. That
was verbal, or, yeah, that's nothing that's been.
That's nothing we're doing right now.
Just kind of-
And we would not do that until it comes in writing from the health department, but that is what they're going towards. And I know the ESC is acting on that just verbally. It was said Friday, and I'm waiting until it's in writing. I learned that very, ESC is. So I'm waiting for writing.
Yeah, one thing that hasn't changed is the quarantine zone,
Correct,
which is the 2 weeks.
correct, that is correct.
So, I mean, we're gonna have new cases every day here,
Yes.
every day. In other words, we're-
I am very, very concerned over the next 6 weeks.
I don't understand why, like, just a 2-week, like, total quarantine to try to stop the daily that we're having.
Well, the concern with that is what do they do outside of school?
I
Well, let's
understand your internal,
Right,
But
because I asked the same
but
question.
the problem is external. The problem is not internal.
I agree.
The problem is external.
Right. And I fear that if we take that 2-week quarantine, at least for 7 hours a day, we know they're here and they're following protocols to keep them safe. Once they're not here, because it's exactly what's happening. It's when they're away from school is where this stuff is going on, and they don't wear masks, they don't follow the social distancing. I fear that once you do that will occur much more. You're giving them 7 more hours a day for them to not socially distance, to get together, doing what they're doing on the weekends and somewhat in the evenings now. And I'm afraid that will lead.
We do that daily.
I'm afraid that will lead to more people, because you're giving them more time to do that. And I know that, the CDC has made the statement that the safest place for kids are schools, and actually it's come out, they said, in Europe, kind of doing where they do everything to keep schools open, but they close down the bars and restaurants. In America, they're kind of they close down schools, but keep bars and restaurants open where you're more likely to get something. So
Well, right now, that's not the case. Lobbies are closed, and there's a curfew.
yeah, there's a curfew. That's what Governor Brown's doing to try to slow things down.
Restaurants,
She has it
lobbies are closed
today.
in restaurants.
She has it today.
And,
But like for example, Kentucky shut down in face-to-face, but they're letting bars and restaurants stay open now. They cannot inside of the restaurants and bars, but they can do the carry-out, they can sit outside and so forth.
I think for me, it comes down to our ability to accurately contact trace and just make sure we're reporting the numbers correctly, because I've struggled with, because like what Mr. Raleigh just said, well, like, what is it better, take 2 weeks off and reset? Or do we keep doing what we're doing and have these trigger numbers? I'll be honest, I don't know that it matters at this point. Either way, I think we're gonna get triggered just the way things are. But going back to looking at the 2 options, I am really concerned if we do have a 2-week break. that it's going to be even worse than if we just have the kids staying in school because of those
We
issues.
just have, yeah.
Because I really worry about the first 2 weeks in January
Right.
because
But-
of having the break at winter break.
But I don't want to, if we're keeping the kids in school, I just want to make sure that we're continuing to do what we're supposed to do in terms of, being honest with contact tracing, making sure that parents are still understand if there's symptoms, you've got to, let people know, keep your kids home, whatever it
And
is.
then Ms. Wolfenberger, when in doubt, I say they quarantine.
Right.
Because I don't want to take a chance of keeping, so if they're not sure, then I'd rather keep them in quarantine than keep them.
From the beginning, it's been self-assessment, we've had to, that's all we could do.
And we've been
And the
affected,
numbers are growing,
Yes.
with self-assessment.
Which is consistent with, our numbers are consistent with what's going on in the state, I think, as far as, there's a lot more
Well,
cases
actually,
now.
the dashboard that I stand, that Mike's out, the county's staying level, and we don't get any.
Oh, I mean, the state numbers, right, with the county, our geographical area as of
We're
the
gonna,
13th, I got it right, was the highest. in the
Highest for
country.
100,000.
yeah,
But yeah, I'll get it. Was it through the 13th?
and it's nothing like, I know everyone's doing the best they can do, we just all have to, do what we think is best. That's why we're all here. We have different opinions, and how we should approach things. So,
Okay.
I think that being proactive is a good thing, and that 2-week quarantine could not hurt. I think it could help tremendously, especially if we increase cleaning. I'm sorry.
There's no data that says that.
I would agree with you, Lori, that the schools were a significant source of transmission of the virus, but there's not data currently that supports that conclusion.
Yeah,
And it's,
you're right, there's not a lot of data. I'm just.
we're
looking at our
quarantining
data.
a lot
Our
of kids.
numbers are growing daily. We're just looking at Franklin.
We're quarantining a lot of kids, but we're not seeing spread cases as a result of that.
I mean, my
I
grandson
suggest
has
that
been
the
quarantined
protocol-
twice in less than a month. He's missing 28 days of school from basketball.
But if you think about what basketball is, or any sport like that, you are inherently taking more risk. Because you've taken down your social distancing and you've taken down your mask barriers.
Well,
So
to a
you-
point. I mean,
To a point,
to a point.
I mean, that's a contact sport.
Right.
Education's not a contact sport, thankfully.
So is that something to look at? I mean,
What these, in my mind, what Dr. Sander and the team has put together here is ways to establish fact-based decision-making that provide a safe educational environment and a quality education for our children.
in order to stay in school. And I believe that.
Because an in-person, face-to-face education is the most productive for our kids.
As we,
But sometimes
but
staying in
as we
school is
sit,
not the answer.
but as we sit too, what our current policy, what we've approved is if it goes purple, we shut down, we go remote. But this gives us as a leeway, we can shut down a single building, we can consider if we've got a sub issue or a lunchroom issue, we might, where we're already one-to-one on computers, we could take the junior high or we could take the high school, one of those two buildings with significant number of kids and staff. And we could keep the elementaries open because they're not one-to-one.
Right.
And we could continue providing, in-person instruction there, but that's not what we're currently operating under.
Right.
So we would need to change the policy to this if that's what we want to do,
Well, that's what we.
because we need to do what we say.
At the beginning, we talked about the thing that I've been looking at, the study I was looking at, as far as staggering, like who needs it the most, who can be remote and not be affected from the top down, high school, junior high, elementaries. And I kind of think the fact that we're almost close to triggering one of these, even on our standards or the
Two of them.
proposed
We're
standards,
supposed to train to it.
yeah, is kind of maybe
And
evidence
it's a
that.
lot at the junior high and high school level.
Although what I'm saying is I think it might be evidence that it works because our numbers are ticking up. And we're about to hit two of these things to where even our, it makes sense that we're gonna have to shut down, whether it's, going down a certain school or the district.
And the pecking order would be that the high school would be the first to go remote because they're the most independent. And can do, and they're one-to-one, obviously, and then that staff as needed could be there to keep the junior high elementaries open. Second would be the junior high, then one would go to keep the elementaries.
And we're not purple. This is just
This is
based
just regular.
upon what we can handle and what we can do and, you know, our staffing, our attendance and everything else. So, you know, this may trigger before purple comes into play,
Correct.
which it makes sense.
You know, busing is one of our biggest struggle areas right now. I mean, my son alone today said his bus ride was double capacity because we're short drivers. Is there a way that we could shut down one building or our largest problem building or something like that so we can keep other buildings open and still provide busing service? Are there options that are like that, or do we need to close the whole district?
With transportation, I'll tell you what some districts have done is said, we can't provide transportation, but we're going to keep our schools open if you get your child there. Now, we've not discussed that, but that is a very good option. The situation is that the number of buses we have to run the junior high school, that stays the same to do the elementary. So there's not like a relief where you get
You
extra.
can't just close one building and get
Correct.
relief on your busing.
Correct.
And what
The
about,
relief on the busing would have to be the high school, junior high, and an elementary.
I mean, this is so new, there's not data for a lot of things, for COVID. And what are they basing, changing 6 feet to 3 feet again?
Because of the data of how many people that are quarantined that actually get the virus is what they're looking at.
what
Of the
about,
people that are tested, they're quarantined, because everyone that's quarantined isn't tested.
Well, but if they're not showing symptoms, they never get tested.
They're
So if
also-
they're not showing symptoms, they just come back after the
The
quarantine.
article that I sent you guys this week where Lakota and Mason are doing the rapid testing and doing
I
all
asked,
that,
yeah,
so
I
that's part of it as
understand about
well.
that, yeah.
Part of
And
expanded
And
testing.
that's
they're
to
doing.
reduce the quarantine.
yes, and Mason, Jonathan said they did 2 days of all-day testing last week, and there was, they have trouble getting the control group, so they said a lot of the staff members' children were there. But they said they had 0 positive tests on the, whatever they call it scientifically, the study group that was not ill.
so on this proposal, number 2, where it says 20% absence due to illness, would that include absence due to quarantine?
No, we're just talking positive.
So how does
We did
that,
Or
We
illness.
did talk about
I
that.
say, how would that factor in? Because if we have a ton
We would do
of
that,
kids-
for example, if that, the flu can do that to us, like it did this past year. It's kind of, if you're ill, that's the quarantine,
But what I mean, yeah, is what happens if we have a ton of kids out because of quarantine, isn't that the same thing? As far as the ability, you know, the efficacy of like having a teacher in class teaching when half the kids aren't there because they're half on quarantine. And then have, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
yes.
Should that be a factor in?
But well, because we felt like, 20% in elementary is much more than 20% in high school, because in high school you change classes, you got 7 different classes, so you can come in contact, so one quarantine shuts down a lot. One quarantine, for example, when we had the one ill, we had 42 quarantined at the junior highs because we had the bus, we had the school, and we had the basketball team. You know, so one gets multiple depending on what they do. So we felt like you need to go with the illness, but because 20% at the elementary level is much more of an outbreak than 20% at the high school level when it comes to ill and quarantine.
So you could potentially have 20% out in quarantine and 20% out doing illness.
Correct.
You still have school with this.
Is there anything that would allow that a negative test? I think it would be after probably 6 days of exposure to a positive, or they just, is that health department just saying 14 days period is, there's no provision to, after exposure, to test and return earlier on a negative.
Not right now, not unless that comes from the state, because what they'll say is, that quarantine is a strict 14 days because of the incubation period.
Yes.
I know in some like private business settings, yes, that's the policy that businesses have adopted, but not within the school setting.
Yeah, I think Procter & Gamble shut their time frame way down with with the testing
That's
protocol.
That's one of the things that I brought to Dr. Sandra, we're getting basically same day tests. But they have to wait till that, at least the 6 day after exposure at work, so that allows them with a negative to return early from quarantine.
At work, we do 14 days after their initial symptoms, give it to the doctor.
And we did share those 2 testing sites with the staff.
Yes, I've seen that.
If that's the
I
situation.
hope that helps.
Yes, I do too. That was a great resource.
I still don't understand the distinction between quarantine absence versus illness. Like, what's the difference, I guess? Like, what triggers a closure? Why does one trigger closure and one doesn't?
Because
The percentage.
in our discussions, and you all can hop in if I'm speaking correctly, in our discussions, when you're out ill, you're out because you have to be, because you don't feel well enough to come in. If you're quarantined, we're telling you, you gotta stay out. That's our choice because we're following the health department rules. That's really not your fault, and you really can come to class, so you're really not ill. It's just that we're keeping it out as a safety precaution. And that was really the biggest difference, because what can happen is those kids can follow along just on, stay up to date with what they're doing and do the work right away. If I'm sick as a dog, I'm not gonna be doing my work, I'm gonna be ill, I'm gonna, and you're not just keeping up with things. Where the quarantine kids, they do the work every day, and they actually get counted presence because the board adopted that procedure that we could do the remote learning, and you can stay up to date because the state did allow that, because they don't want people worried about perfect attendance coming when they don't feel well.
So are they technically doing distance learning then, if they're on quarantine?
Yes, that's exactly right. So as soon as I'm out, I keep up with my work every day. I can keep up with my work every day, and so when I come back after quarantine, I'm right, just like I didn't miss anything.
I just am like, and that totally makes sense, so thank you for that. I'm just trying to like wrap my head around if half the class is distance, and we have some that are remote, and then some are in person. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm trying to
The
say.
remote,
Distancing They're separate, but they're out together.
they're separate. Yeah, we got a separate group of teachers that work strictly with them. And we've got the distance learning if you're quarantined.
It's the same, so it's really just, okay.
The Dr. Sandra, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we talked about the absence due to illness versus including the quarantines in there, we were talking about, just as Dr. Sandra said, with quarantine, we're sending, someone was within the 6 feet, but we're sending a well child home. If we have 20% that are ill, we felt that was a threshold we need to shut down for deep cleaning. Because just like we did with the flu last year.
Yes.
The chance of transmission is a lot higher.
Test positive?
I'm sorry.
Do you change them if they test positive?
Yes, we do. Yes,
So
we do.
then becomes 14 days from positive test?
It becomes 10 days. Your 14 becomes 10 days.
Okay, got
10 days and then 2 days without symptoms with no medication to mask the symptoms.
14 days is calendar days, not school days.
Correct, sir. As is the 10. Because realistically, here's the thing, the person that causes the quarantine comes back sooner than the kids that are quarantined. Because there's oftentimes, they're a 10-day threshold, the quarantine's 14-day threshold.
Do we know kind of what our base load on what we would call absence due to illness pre-COVID, to where, somebody that's got a toothache or a vision problem, which is like, I can't see myself going to school today, that kind of problem, what that is, or, so we've got some adder we're basically assigning to COVID, like with the flu last year. When we hit that kind of 20%, or is it all inclusive?
It's all inclusive.
Anybody that is
COVID, it's COVID, because right now flu season's already started up, we got people with flu. So you got COVID, you got just your common cold, you got allergies, you got tooth extraction, whatever. And we just always lump them all together.
Yeah, I didn't know, because I got mine home 2 days, just a little bit of running nose, and I just wanted, I wasn't sure how to report it. Because it wasn't anything else, but, we just wanted to make sure it didn't escalate into actually having symptoms, so. It's confusing on how you even report those. Any other discussions or questions about the?
And we consistently say, if you're in doubt, say, don't take the chance.
I think another thing too that helps me live with it a little bit more too, not that it's, but I think it's, I appreciate all the work put into it, obviously, and it makes sense, but what I think is, what if this doesn't work, or what if something happens, we just don't know for sure from day to day what's gonna happen.
Correct.
And, you know, if we found this wasn't working and there was some issue or we tweaked, I mean, it's always modifiable.
Exactly.
You know, we want to be able to give our parents and staff and everything as much of a, you know, something in stone, if it was gonna happen as much as we can, but with this, you know, it changes day to day. Just try to do the best you can for as long as you can, if that changes, then we have to modify.
We try to communicate that to parents and staff every day, like, this is what we're telling you based on what we know today. You could, we have the same conversation tomorrow, and it might be different.
Right.
Unfortunately, that's just the nature of everything.
I mean, at the river, no, I think we could hit these trigger points before we even get to purple.
Well, exactly, yeah.
This might actually be
Very.
more stringent
I think
than
we will, yeah.
Well, I mean, the lack of subs is taking a huge strain on staff.
river up to.
Feel like, you know, like they're not actually
More
doing
subs
that.
than we-
A big strain on staff. I heard from several staff members. You know, so I'm just more, you know, like I said, sometimes we just scream. I'd rather be
And to be honest with you,
proactive,
I'm just.
take that quarantine period of time, be proactive.
But we're not purple. You know what I mean? Are you saying for 2-week quarantine for the purple, or are you saying do it now? We're not purple right now, you know what I mean? But they're like,
Exactly.
Are we
I
only
want to make sure I understand what you're saying. Are you saying keep, if we go purple, keep what we have, or are you wanting to do like a reset for 2 weeks like now?
Well, no, I think, no, I'm not saying no.
Okay, that's what I'm.
So
I'm not saying no.
with these guidelines.
But I just think these
these
operational guidelines, you know, these are educator ideas taken to the health department to be, you know, approved. These aren't health department guidelines that were in place.
Correct.
These are educator
But
guidelines.
they didn't give us guidelines.
And then, well, they did.
Did they? Did
No,
tell
they
us to
just,
do that?
they're letting us do our own thing.
They can do some basic guidelines, you know, at your, you know, like use your best judgment.
Correct, that's correct. And these are guidelines, I think that not only would be for purple, like we say, maybe tomorrow. If, you know, we may trigger tomorrow.
Right, I think ours are more, like Mr. Fleming said, more stringent possibly than what we currently have.
So why I think we should, if this is approved tonight, we need to advertise that, but we also need to advertise that these are triggers, period, that even under the red situation.
Well, at least the thing about these triggers is they're Franklin City Schools related and something going on in Mason
Exactly.
or Springboro, wherever else impacting us because we go purple and our current rule situation says we shut down regardless of what's going on here.
Right now,
We're gonna do generic, these are generic, these are everywhere. And lots of,
All I'm saying, that is, all those individual rules are for our district.
Franklin did.
And if we're just going off Warren County, that we could be impacted with no issue here, we could end up, so at least we're going off of what's going on in our district and making those decisions off of that, not off of being forced because something's going on elsewhere.
or the opposite, because we're the highest right now.
Or we
And
could-
might
we could
trigger
be
it
going
before
down,
somebody
yeah.
else does.
And we may close, but that's a
Yeah,
little Miami.
I mean, it works the other way.
Right, but at least we're,
Yeah, but
at
it's
least if we
more-
close down, it's because of what we're doing, not because of what somebody else.
In our needs. what we
Right.
do.
And it's data driven and not emotionally driven.
I mean, county-wise, we compare ourselves all the time. Whether it be salary, procedures, guidelines. I mean, it's just a good starting.
I would agree,
My
yeah,
opinion.
I agree with that.
I think pay and pandemic are two different topics, so they're not related.
Yeah, it is something we have to deal with, and we have, you know, different demographics from other people in the county, and there's no question. But it doesn't hurt, I mean, I always look at what everybody else is doing as well. It's a matter of, it's something that's totally unprecedented, what do we do with our specific needs?
Well, I don't think there's anyone on
It's kind of like the sports thing, it's like, when we first started looking at it. It's like, So you had a major concern, Ms. White, like, do we look at sports? I'm like, well, why do you want to open that box when you don't have to? You know? I just feel like we're opening boxes we don't need to open yet.
I kind of see, I mean, yeah.
Whether they're more stringent, whether they're more lenient, whether they're, educator guidelines, you know, that, the health department approved, no matter what they are. It's just, it's just opening a box that we don't really have to open.
I understand. I mean, I think that after, I talked to Dr. Sandra about it too, with the 2 week, just shutting down when we go purple, I just don't think that fits us. Especially if we're looking at almost shutting down under this new guideline, I feel like that's kind of a testament to the fact that it does suit us a little bit better. Maybe we need to shut down and reset, or we need a school to shut down and reset when Springboro, Carlisle, Mason, they're okay, and they don't need to, but we do. And this gives us the ability to do that. That's kind of what I'm just now, when you said that we may be triggering too, that it might be better for us because it does provide a guideline for, hey, we need these numbers, we need to reset, we need to work on some things, and you guys need to work on some things, and what you're doing outside of the school. So.
Also could be getting the availability of more subs because of districts that have gone all remote. I mean, that's,
I don't even know how many are remote at this time.
I mean, what Mike said, what Kings.
Well, that's
Kings.
just forced because of the subs issue.
Yes, and they're,
Staff being in fact, so-
Right.
they're all through next, they're through the Kings High School's Monday, Tuesday to this, but then the whole district is Monday, Tuesday next week, and he said he's looking at maybe the entire week next week. Kings may have the district go remote for the entire week after Thanksgiving.
And then, who else? I know Little Miami and Waynesville.
Waynesville is, Little Miami's junior high and high school's remote. Tomorrow's their last day, they're going to come back on the 30th. Waynesville is going 100% remote, Monday, Tuesday after Thanksgiving. And then Clinton.
Well, just until the
is part of
numbers
theirs.
go down.
But Waynesville's doing strictly Monday, Tuesday right now.
They said that means a Thanksgiving, that has
Correct.
nothing to do with purple or.
No, that was before
Yeah,
Thanksgiving.
that was
That's
It's
correct.
cases, it's numbers of cases.
But they
I mean,
said,
I said with the board member from all districts.
they said it was for Thanksgiving, in a anticipated response to Thanksgiving.
And Clinton Massey is 3 days next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And I don't know if
What's
it's
Clint Massey doing?
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week. And I don't know if they're adding 2 or 1 because they always were off the day after Thanksgiving, the Monday after, because that's the first day of deer season. So they used to traditionally close. Honest to goodness.
You get your 20% that way.
Yeah. All right, is there any more discussion or questions? All right, Chair will entertain a motion to approve the data dashboard recommended by Dr. Sanders.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Sizemore and second, Mr. Fleming. Dr. Sanders?
Ms. Raleigh,
No,
Mr. Sizemore,
Yes.
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Ms. Wolfenbarger.
Yes. All right, next up we have E.
E is the resolution for school funding. We're just going through it. It's very, very important to have the different, and I apologize, but the different resolutions to be acted on separately on that. And so I'm asking that the board approve the resolution for the Fair Share School Funding Plan. What this is a little bit different. I was thinking of getting into the resolutions at the end, but what this one's about is talking about what used to be called the Cup-Patterson report. This has 2 different bills. One is in the House, one is in the Senate. They're both exactly the same to try to streamline it through. They're trying to get through. What this is a 2 years in the making. It is a true funding formula, not a spending plan. Ever since the Durrell decision, Ohio has worked on spending plans, and you get a spending plan based on who the governor is. This is a true funding formula that deals with the base pay. You have adjustments for poverty, for identified students, for ELL students. and so forth. So it is a true funding formula that you can actually establish and not say, okay, this is good only through Governor DeWine's term, and then we have to see who wins the governor to see what the next one. So that actually you can kind of predict what your money would be. Also would eliminate caps and guarantees. As you know, we're on a cap. Over the last 5 years, we should have gotten about $3 million more than we did, but it's going to schools that are on the guarantee. This would be a 6-year phase-in, should be approved, but what it amounts to is after the 6-year phase-in would be in today's, as of what would be for fiscal year 21, would be an additional $4.2 million. So fully funded, and allegedly what is said is that they can fully fund it. They do not have to raise taxes because it is, both houses are controlled by the Republicans who do not want to raise taxes. Remember, all through COVID, the first quarter of this year is better than the first quarter of 2019 when it comes to revenue. And also remember, the rainy day fund has not been touched and it is at its legal maximum. So any revenue coming in doesn't need to go out. With that being said, it does take caps and guarantees away and would be an additional $700,000 a year in fiscal year 21, an additional 1.4 in fiscal year 22, eventually till after 6 years would be in today's dollars, be an additional $4.2 million.
But it has to pass by December 31st.
Yes, and actually they're aiming towards 12/11 because they don't they want to get them passed so go to the governor because they don't want to work after December.
Yeah,
11.
and they have a lot of opposition.
Senator Huffman is a big stumbling block with that. Apparently he's got his own spending plan that nobody has seen or reviewed or he's shared.
It's great, I hope it works, but if it don't work before the 31st, it's not gonna work.
Correct, that is correct. It's very, very important to get it done in lame duck session.
Right. I mean, they're working hard on it. They're working hard. on it.
Yes, yes. And I'll tell you what, we've got great support with Representative Lips and Senator Wilson for doing fantastic job. Extremely supportive of this bill.
I have my fingers crossed, I hope so,
I do too.
I really hope so.
It's got its best chance now, it really does.
Right.
And that's why OSBA has put this out, the sample resolution, ask school boards to do this, and then send it back to them, send it to BASA, send it to OASBO, so that they can present to the Senate and to the House saying, this is what our constituents are saying wholeheartedly. And it truly is a funding formula, which has been desired since the Burrell decision.
And they need these resolutions approved and in hand.
Yes, so they can take those to those representatives and senators.
Any discussion or questions? Chair will entertain a motion. Mr. Fleming
Second,
and Mrs. Raleigh, second. Dr. Sanders?
Ms. Raleigh?
yes.
Mr. Sizemore?
Yes.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Ms. Wolfenberg?
Yes.
Next is a resolution. This is an annual event. This is a resolution to not provide career and technical education at the junior high level. We do have STEM, but that does not count towards that. We do have different activities we do for career explanation, but they're not true career tech like we have some at the high school with our programming, with our Project Lead the Way, with our career center. So this we've done in the past, and we just need to approve this resolution. It's an annual event.
Any questions, discussion? Chair will entertain a motion.
Second,
Mr. Sizemore and Mrs. Raleigh, second. Dr. Sanders?
Mrs. Raleigh?
yes.
Mr. Sizemore?
Yes.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Ms. Wolfenberg?
Yes.
Next would be personnel. Ask that the board approve the retirement at the end of the 2021 school year for Tammy Birchfield, principal at Franklin Junior High School.
This is on for first read, Dr. Sanders. Do you want action?
If you don't mind, the retirements usually, the resignations will usually act upon.
And it's just her second year, isn't it?
Yes. Mhm. She's got a daughter down in the University of Tennessee. They sold their home and they were renting an apartment. And they actually found a piece of property that they wanted to actually purchased in Tennessee. And her husband's been retired for several years. They get immediate in-state tuition in Tennessee and they don't have income tax, state income tax in Tennessee. So it seems like things kind of worked out pretty well.
This is year 30 for her. It's year 30.
It's year 30 for her, but year 2 with us, yes.
All right. Any discussion or questions? Chair will entertain a motion. Mr. Fleming, second.
Second.
Mr. Sizemore, Dr. Sander.
Mr. Raleigh,
Yes.
Mr. Sizemore,
Yes.
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Ms. Wolfenbarger.
Yes.
Next would be that the board approve medical leave for COVID for Mary Meyer from January 4th, 2021 through June 1st, 2021. And this is under the FFCRA eligible staff members to apply for this.
You do not need
As I
action.
said, yes, on as a first reading.
First reading, it's up to you.
Do you want?
If-
All right, any questions or concerns about that? Carol will entertain a motion.
Second.
All right, Mr. Sizemore, and second, Mrs. Raleigh.
Ms. Raleigh,
Yes.
Mr. Sizemore?
Yes.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Ms. Wolfenbarger?
Yes.
Next is an action item. This was discussed at the November 9th meeting. Asked that you hire Mary Brinson, Tanya Johns for all areas excluding bus driving.
All right, Carol will entertain a motion. There's no discussion or questions for Dr. Sander. Mr. Fleming. For a second. Mr. Raleigh. Dr. Sander.
Ms. Raleigh,
Yes.
Mr. Sizemore?
Yes.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Ms. Wolfenbarger?
Yes.
Next is a first read, and I apologize, but when we get into December, only has one board meeting, does not have a work session, and so we do some first reads now and some action items from previous work session. This is a first read for the certified, non-certified supplementals. Hyda Drake, Matt Middleton, and Micah Stewart for the winter guards and JV president. If it's okay, I'll bring it back December.
Yes.
12th, or December 14th, I apologize. Next is also a first read for non-certified, certified supplementals. This is Kaylee Bush as the varsity assistant girls basketball coach.
Bring that back.
That's okay? Bring it back on the 14th. Next item is also first read with certified substitutes and hires. This one, I asked the possibility the board take action on this. We've been one short of intervention specialist, and then we had another one resign, so we've been two short for the last couple of weeks. This young lady, Michelle Arnold, Mr. McFarland can talk about, but basically she graduates in December. Just actually very few, she finishes up her student teaching very soon.
On the 30th.
And then she's already certified to be a sub. And then, so what we would like to do is hire her as a sub beginning December the 1st. And then once she gets her certificate, we move right into the intervention specialist at that particular time. I don't know when it's going to be because it all comes with transcripts and you know how ODE gets that, but it would give a continuity of service. She would actually begin being their teacher December the 1st, and that would be what's best for the kids in that continuity for that. And so I would ask for action on this one if you don't mind, because it is a very, very special case. And I would like to thank Mr. McFarland for working very hard to find this individual. We're hoping maybe we can find somebody else that's also graduates at mid-year.
She's presently student teaching at Centerville. She worked as a paraprofessional for 5 years prior to this, and she decided to go and pursue her special ed intervention specialist license. So she's actually submitted her application, but they can't process it until her student teaching completes, which is her last day is the 30th, this upcoming Monday.
Any discussion or questions? All right, Chair will entertain a motion.
So,
Mrs. Raleigh and second, Mr. Fleming.
Ms. Raleigh,
yes.
Mr. Fleming, or Mr. Sidemore, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Ms. Wolfenbarger.
Yes.
Sorry, I don't want to get over here. Next, if we could do consent items, and I apologize, this may take me a little bit to, and I'm not as prepared for the treasurer's part as I should be, but the consent items for A and for B with the donation to Hunter. This would be a first read for both of them, so I can bring them back on the 14th if that's okay.
That's fine. Or we can, if you want to, we can take action.
It's
on
whatever you
donations.
want. If consent items, we can do both of them, it'd be great. No, knock them off.
Yeah, any questions or discussion? All right, Chair will entertain a motion. Mr. Sizemore and Mr. Fleming second, Dr. Sander.
Ms. Raleigh,
Yes.
Mr. Sizemore?
Yes.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Ms. Wolfenbarger?
Yes.
Thank you. Financial reports, we've got the typical ones available, check issued, reconciliations and so forth.
Any questions, discussion? Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Mrs. Raleigh, for a a second? Mr. Fleming, Dr. Sanders?
Ms. Raleigh,
Yes.
Mr. Sizemore,
Yes.
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Ms. Wolfenbarger.
Yes.
Next, I ask that the board approve the return for the prior year's advances. We always have to do the transfers and all this to balance things out to get these initials, and this just puts things back where they belong after the initial first quarter of the fiscal year.
Any questions, discussion? Chair will entertain a motion to approve as presented.
So moved.
Mr. Sizemore, is there a second?
Second.
Mrs. Raleigh? Dr. Sanders?
Mrs. Raleigh,
Yes.
Mr. Sizemore,
Yes.
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Ms. Wolfenbarger.
Yes.
Item F is, we discussed at the first, or the work session this month earlier. This is a resolution extending the, establishing the bond millage to 4.94. Like we talked about, this was the promise we made to our community, saying that this is all we're going to be collecting to that.
And we talked about that in the finance committee. It was important for us that we were carrying through with what we said we were going to do. And, you know, the original language was this, what, 6.52, but correct. You know, we said it would basically be 4.94.
What we're going for.
And this resolution would go to Mr. Nolan, who would assess that on the taxes at the 4.94 rate.
This is information definitely needs to be out there before we.
Yes.
Pretty good.
Sorry.
We've
Yeah.
got, we have our version rate with the article written right.
I got it.
I know.
In my draft folder, ready to hit send as soon as you guys say yes.
Good.
So there will be a press release in just a few seconds.
All right. Any discussion first? All right, Chair will entertain a motion.
Second.
Mr. Fleming and second Mrs. Raleigh.
Mrs. Raleigh,
Yes.
Mr. Sizemore,
Yes.
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Ms. Wolfenbarger.
Yes. I think we need to do E, Dr. Sanders. I think I got skipped.
He did the donation.
I'm sorry. E is as the board approved the amended appropriations. I apologize. Thank you.
We did D.
We did D, now I got to go back to E, you're correct.
All right. Any questions or discussion? All
I'm
right, Chair
sorry.
will entertain a motion. Oh, no, that's it. Mr. Sizemore, is there a second? Mr. Fleming, Dr. Sanders?
Ms. Raleigh,
Yes.
Mr. Sizemore,
Yes.
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Ms. Wolfenbarger.
Yes.
All right. Last time I checked, we got to do G. G, this also was discussed in the finance committee, and this is the 5-year forecast. Coming up for the next couple, for the next 5 years, obviously, we do hit deficit part. You know, he can only, Mr. Trey can only put in the data that goes to the levy expires or operational levy expires. But it's a different type of format, which he went through that he's open, will be easier for everybody to read. But that was discussed, and if Mr. Sessions or Mr. Raleigh will bring up anything more about that.
Obviously, when you've got a biennial state budget and you're being asked as a district to project 5 years, and then you've got these variations in funding and trying to guess what all those are going to be, it's a kind of a miracle that we're in the right ballpark sometimes with the way they force those projections, but a lot of good data. And
Yeah, we're more than in the right ballpark. We're doing.
Yes, we're doing well. We're still in
Good.
same, we're still gonna be very fiscally conservative.
Yes.
Because I reviewed it and I was like, I believe this is where we want it to be, but you know, it's hard to tell because the levies are factored in, so I'm glad that you.
We're looking,
Because I
we're
was-
looking money we're not allowed to show. We can't assume a levy renewal in the future and all this.
I was-
Can't assume these potential state funding changes, any of that until they actually happen.
The current levy expire what year?
24. We, I think we said no, nothing for 24.
Yeah, we said nothing, no new money before 2024. 2023 is when we need to get that renewal because we had a 5-year at the midterm elections, which was 2018, when we got that substitute levy passed.
The other thing that's not shown in there, but we talked about also at the finance committee was, we will have, what we should have, savings in administrative costs, energy efficiency, running less buildings and all that. When we do start bringing our new buildings online, we can't really project that yet. But
Right.
there will be savings in the future that'll help bring that deficit back toward the zero.
And I'll be honest with you, I was a nervous wreck, but I got it. I felt better afterwards, but we discussed it, of course, of being, so we really did, we just, But I think the board has done a fantastic job with your all's directive to say, save, and I would like to acknowledge Rodney, and Rob is, who's not here, and Rodney who's not here, because all four of them are very, very fiscally conservative and appreciate their efforts. They honestly do treat it like it's their own money.
Thank you. All right, any other discussion or questions? Chair will entertain a motion to approve the forecast.
So moved.
Mrs. Raleigh, second.
Second.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Sizemore, Dr. Sanders.
Mrs. Raleigh,
Yes.
Mr. Sizemore,
Yes.
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Ms. Wolfenbarger.
Yes.
Next is new business. Here we get into the, and this is what Charlie's saying for, and I appreciate that, Charlie. First is authorizing the resolution for the sale and insurance of $66 million series 2021 bonds and notes. That is for the actual, our share of the health project. This document was prepared by Bronson McCord, which is part of his britain that the school has hired to be their, we've got the different attorneys who do different things. This is his ball of wax, so he's taking care of this. Him and Brian McLean was working.
Finals of the essence, interest rates, we're going to, obviously got the great ranking.
Yeah, the recommendation from the fifth third representative, yes, to go ahead and try to proceed and take advantage of the rates where they are now, because they can only
Increase.
go up from here in his opinion. So, but that's effectively financing our 66 million portion, so that we'll get that money up front to pay to get it done, and then we will repay that with our levy monies every year.
One money,
Yes.
and then the sale will come in and pay for the rest.
All right, any other questions or discussion? Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Mrs. Raleigh.
Second.
Second, Mr. Fleming, Dr. Sanders.
Mrs. Raleigh,
Yes.
Mr. Sizemore,
Yes.
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Mrs. Wolfenbarger.
Yes.
Item B, this is authorize the resolution to advertise for the owner's rep service. That is the first part that Mr. James was talking about early on, was the owner's rep,
All right, any
which would be the
questions?
actual next step, next hire by the school.
The owners. And they said, this is the position where you said that you don't want it to be the business manager because they have other things going on, correct?
Correct.
But have you ever talked to Ronnie about, like for the increase? Is that right?
He's not been here since
You don't want to
then.
do it?
It's best, it's actually best not to go to somebody specialized on that, really.
Yeah, because I mean, this one's like one he could possibly do.
And it could be, this is just advertised, it could be given to him, yes. It could still be put on his plate to do that. But this gives us the right to advertise
Right.
and see what's out there. But you're correct.
Any other questions or discussions? All right, Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Mr. Sizemore, is there a second?
Second,
Mrs. Raleigh, Dr. Sanders.
Mrs. Raleigh,
yes.
Mr. Sizemore?
Yes.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Mrs. Wolfenbarger?
Yes.
C, this authorizes the resolution to advertise for the construction management services. That was the next portion that Charlie was talking about, and that's the one that takes a little bit more time. That we look to maybe, you have to have interviews and so forth, so that may be a February timeline for action. But this needs to be done now to meet that timeline, to be ahead of the game.
Any questions or discussion? Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Mr. Fleming,
Second.
second, Mr. Sizemore, Dr. Sanders.
Mrs. Raleigh,
Yes.
Mr. Sizemore,
Yes.
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Mrs. Wolfenbarger.
Yes.
Maybe it was with
That's all for me.
Thank you. All
Maybe it was the other one.
right, next up, we have reports and comments by board members. Mr. Raleigh, you want to kick this off? No.
No.
All right, Mr. Sizemore.
Very rare that Mr. Nipper ever lets the rest of us have it.
That's true.
Thank everybody again, especially Steve and Leanne, thank them again, all their efforts. And, even I know there was a whole lot of other people working and they were quick to make sure they got some credit as well. But when you're on the hook to be the chair of a committee like that, you're like sometimes steering a rudderless ship, hoping it doesn't hit an iceberg somewhere, so. So it's awesome that they were willing to step up and kind of take that on and kind of own it, so. Other than that, I hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving. I'm done.
All right, Mr. Fleming?
Happy Thanksgiving. That's all I got.
I'll just thank everybody for being here. I know we've gone a little bit longer, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mr. Raleigh, second, Mr. Sizemore.
Mrs. Raleigh,
Yes.
Mr. Sizemore,
Yes.
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Ms. Wolfenbarger.
Yes.
7:30.
Charlie, your section up, your Raleigh, your Raleigh.